Hey everyone, and welcome to what I believe is one of the most important webinars of the year. And I'm glad everyone here could join us, and especially Graham from Leeds. Today, we're really going to be diving into a critical topic that really isn't talked about enough and really should be, which is web skimming, also known as Magecart attacks, and the threat that's becoming increasingly common and increasingly more sophisticated as time goes on. What makes today special is we're going to hearing about from the valuable information directly from Graham at Leeds, who has kindly agreed to share his first hand experience. And I've been in Reflectors for over 5.5 years, and it's not every day we get this kind of openness around a real world breach. So I want to take a moment to thank Graham, and not just for being here, but also willingness to speak up and help others learn from what actually happened at Leeds. And that takes courage that we don't really see every single day. And it's something that we should absolutely be applauded. And I really do thank you for taking your time today. So before
Pleasure.
we get into before we get into Graham's story, a quick introduction. My name's Isaac, and I'm the VP Sales here at Reflectors. As I said, I've been at Reflectors for close to 6 years, working closely with organizations around the world to help them protect their websites from exactly these kinds of threats. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about Reflectors after Graham finishes, but just a quick overview to set the stage. Reflectors is a cybersecurity company founded in 2019 by industry experts with a clear mission to help businesses secure their digital environments against risks coming from third-party scripts and web components. These kinds of exposure are really often overlooked, and they're exactly what attackers exploit in Magecart style attacks. Reflectors is a team of over 35 security specialists, and we work with a wide range of organizations from leading global brands like eBay, Mango, WH Smith, Otter, and others that you can see over here. And we have been recognized by Gartner for our innovation in website security, something we're very proud of. We'll get exactly into how we help customers later on, but for now, I'd like to hand it over to Graham, and he'll make a quick introduction about himself before we get into the questions. Graham, it's over to you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Graham Peck. I'm the IT Information and Security Manager at Leeds United Football Club. I've been there for about 6 years now. As you'd see from my biography, a bit of diverse background there from manufacturing, data centers, and various other aspects. Yeah, what can I tell you? The club's just been recently promoted to the Premier League. We've been around since 1919 as such. So, yeah, it's a long-standing relationship with a local town, and that's of Leeds. And there's some exciting things happening as well with regards to increasing in size. But that's a bit about me.
So as we just said, very congratulations on the promotion, and it's something that we've been following here at Reflectors, and I'm sure we've been speaking to you for a long time as well, and we congratulate you that as well.
No,
So
thank you.
So let's move over to what we're also talking about. So Graham, you mentioned that Leeds United has been around for over 100 years. Can you tell us a little bit more about the challenges football clubs like Leeds face in terms of revenue generation and operations?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a misnomer with regards to outlook on clubs. A lot of individuals see it as a large money and so forth and that. But in truth, I think, yes, on the football side of it, there is. But what people don't understand is it doesn't matter if you're a very large club that's been in the Premier League for a long time or a smaller club. We're kind of made up in the same format. We're made up of some smaller companies that make up the club as a whole. But unlike normal companies where you have 365 days to try and make as much money as you can for your financial year, we have, well, now in the Premier League, about 38 matches and a couple of cup matches that we have to utilize to be able to make as much money as possible. So by having something like a breach or whatever the case is that would prevent a game is our worst case scenario.
So you mentioned obviously the breach. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the breach that happened on Leeds United retail web store, and maybe you can walk us through how you first discovered the Magecart style attack on your website, and what were the initial steps that you took in order to investigate the breach.
Yeah, so as you would expect from a football club, especially when you're looking at going in the Premier League or you've just been in the Premier League, you put up a lot of investment into your security products and so forth. Um, so you do like any normal company, you have your NDRs and your XDRs and all of that. But one of the areas that you assumed would be managed by your companies that you manage, that you outsource to for websites and so forth, that they would hold the same type of level of security as you would. But in this case, what happened was I had two police officers from the National Crime Agency arrive at 10 o'clock in the morning at the club and inform me that somebody from the National Crime and Security Centre had reported some spurious traffic on a website that they were monitoring, and it looked like it came from our retail web store. This was at 10 o'clock in the morning. So the first thing we did was grabbed hold of head of retail. We sat down, got hold of the company that looks after the retail website, gave them the evidence that we'd been given by the NCSC, and said, "Look, there's an issue. Can you please confirm?" They originally came back to us and said, "Oh no, there's no issue. It's a false alarm." We said, "Look, we definitely have a look again." At which point they came back to us and said, "Yes, we've noticed that somebody was able to inject some code into an API." We immediately shut down the website so that we could do some more investigation. At that point, I went to the business and said, "Look, we have a problem, and I need to start the breach process." Well, I say a breach process. At this stage, we classify it as a security event because you don't know until such time as you've got confirmation that data has actually been taken. It's a security event. I got hold of our company that do our forensic analysis, got them on board, and started the process of then trying to discover what this code was doing, and at the same time having the other part of the business start looking at the other aspects of the breach, being what communication is going to go out, um, uh, confirming with our retail fulfillment, so forth, that we've got an issue at the time, so that they can start looking at what transactions were done on the site and so forth. So whilst doing that, we were lucky enough, we had kind of created almost like a breach playbook for different scenarios for like ransomware attacks and so forth. But in this case, it came a little bit off left field, being from the supply chain side, when we had assumed that everything was in place. So from our perspective, we had an alert back, I'd say a good 6 months ago, from Adobe with regards to Magento, saying that there was a vulnerability, please get it patched. We had raised the ticket with a third party. They assured us that they patched it and so forth. But because we never had visibility within that environment, we trusted the third party to be able to do the work that they said they were doing. In this case, the patch hadn't been applied, and it was a traditional Magecart skimming attack. We confirmed through the forensic analysis that they had managed to upload the code at about 8 o'clock on the 18th of February in the evening, and we had closed it on the 24th at about 10:30 when we got the third party to close the site itself. And during that period of time, we were lucky enough to only have a small amount of transactions that would be going through. It could have been a lot worse had there been like a kit launch or something like that. It could have been quite disastrous. But still, even one breach of customer data is an impact on our side, and I take it quite personally in the form of it's my responsibility to keep my customers' data safe. And here it was where what I had assumed was a low risk because of a third party actually turned out to be more of a higher risk than what we had originally assessed.
So
Yeah, go for it.
So maybe you could also tell a little bit about what was the immediate impact of the breach on Leeds United's operations and reputation, and how did it affect any, financials, etc.
Yeah, so well, obviously any breach nowadays has an effect on reputation. I think the other thing that was a bit of an issue is the form of it wasn't something that we did locally ourselves that caused the breach, other than uh, because it's in another area that you trust, but it's your name at the end of the day on the top of that website, and your fans, your customers that's on there. So from a responsibility perspective, it is ours ultimately, but more so in the form of the data that you've now managed to let out of your control. So that was like, yeah, not something that I took lightly. But yeah, what more can I say? It happened. From a financial perspective, it obviously had an impact on immediate transactions, and retail website couldn't function until we had got it back up and running after making sure that it was fully tested and was secure. And also knocks a little bit of the confidence of the people that you've then had to inform that there's been a chance that the data has been breached, and to keep an eye on any spurious transactions that may happen on their account and so forth.
Very true. So you discussed earlier about the challenges of managing third-party vendors, especially in terms of the visibility and patch management. Before the breach, you relied on, as you said, external vendors and website management. How did this impact your ability to manage security risks? And what key lessons have you learned from your experience since integrating Reflectors?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things I think it's needing to be a little bit more firm with the business, and getting them to understand the vulnerability from the third party side. We looked at Reflectors, I'll be honest, I met Leo and them at InfoSec a year before this has happened. And had I managed to convince the business to put the tools in at the time, we wouldn't be having this conversation with regards to a breach. That I know for definite. It's trying to get people to, I think now it's easier for people to understand the risk, because there's been a lot of high profile third party vendor breaches. So we've had large ones recently, M&S, Co-op, Harrods, and so the list is going on. And there seems to be a concerted effort by various outside influencers on supply chain. And worst case scenario is they sit on your networks for long periods of time. We were extremely lucky. I mean, I'll be honest, we were extremely lucky to only have about 6 days of data capture. If you look at the average, you're looking at over 195 days that somebody would be sitting on your network, skimming off data, unbeknownst to you, because they run within the user's browser, for example, skimming the information off. And typically they end up where they ransomware a lot of the data on your devices afterwards to incur an even bigger issue from a security perspective. So yes, we were extremely lucky to only have 6 days of having this. And the main point I'd like to put across is, just because you have a third party that looks after your data and so forth, doesn't mean you don't visibility in there to be able to see what it is that third party is actually running internally. So an example is, we may treat them as a third party product, but unbeknownst to us, there may be fourth party products that they tie into their product sets to be able to offer the services to us. And one of those can be the vulnerable ones, where you may see visibility of data that shouldn't be shared to that fourth party that is, and then at least you have visibility of it now so that you can question. Without that visibility, you don't really know what it is that you're looking for. You're just hoping that that company, through your contracts and so forth, has the same level of security mindset that you as a larger organization have.
You mentioned that obviously you met us a year earlier at InfoSec, and obviously we had a quick discussion. And as you said at the time, it was something that you were not able to get to convince the organization that this is something you were on board, of course, but the organization. What would you say to other people that may be hearing you today, that may be in very similar cases that they're not able to convince or take this threat as seriously as it really is?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I'm sitting here with proof in the form of the fact that if you don't have that visibility, how do you know if the people are telling you that they've done what they've done? You have no way of checking it. In my case, I had an email from a service desk that says they've applied a patch, but without visibility of the code within the site to confirm that the patch has actually been applied, I would have just gone based on trust. Unfortunately, in the environment that we're in now, you can't just base everything on trust. You have to have the tools to be able to give you that additional visibility, which then forms the backbone of your risk assessments that you can then push to the business and say, there is an increased risk because of the fact that I have no control, or we as a club or as a business have no control over this aspect of it. And it doesn't matter that the policies are gone through legal and so forth for the contracts to state that this is the case. You have no control over, unfortunately, the third parties and who they have working for them from their third party side.
And you talked a lot here about visibility, and the visibility that you didn't have before using reflectors as well, in order to understand. And you mentioned also third, fourth party, fifth, sixth. I'm sure you would also get into as well. Could you maybe, how's this level of transparency with using obviously a product like Reflectors helped you understand maybe the security risks that you had before, and also assist you in, neutralizing that security risk going further forward?
I think the advantage that I've got now is I have confidence in knowing what it is that my various websites, especially those that are taking transactions on them, that's running, and the security state of each one of those. Whereas before I didn't have that. It also means I now have evidence that I can go back to that third party and say, can you confirm why Metapixel has, for example, a higher rate of visibility of this data when 6 months ago or 3 months ago they didn't have that? Is there a misconfiguration somewhere? You've now got evidence that you can go back to them and question. So that is my big difference that I have now, is I can say there's a better visibility and evidence, whereas before, because I couldn't see it, I just trusted. Now, I'll be honest, that trust, we've moved providers, so we have a new retail provider now that came online yesterday. So I have confidence in knowing that we ran their site through the system before they went live and so forth on that, to make sure that we're not going to be in the same position as we were before.
And obviously you trained providers. Now, how easy was it for you to set up tool like Reflectors from your side in order to help you gain this type of visibility, especially when you're looking at it from Reflectors as an agentless tool?
Yeah, so I mean, well, as you mentioned, the big advantage of this, it's agentless. I don't have to install anything on anywhere, especially if your uh, third party, your websites and so forth are hosted by a third party. It's trying to get that change control in place and so forth. In this case, it was a painless process. There's no agent to worry about. I didn't need to create an account for it to be able to act as the client going through the site or the shopping process. Um, the only thing I did on some cases was we just had to give an IP address so it could be whitelisted, and out of due diligence is inform the third party that we are going to be actively monitoring it. It means it keeps them on their toes, but also it means that they can expect some traffic from a website that's doing some investigation. But the advantage was it was very low impact. It doesn't affect the performance of the website at all. It's non-intrusive from our perspective, but brings back a lot of information.
Uh, in conversations that we've had since during the onboarding session and also after, you mentioned to us as well that Leeds has really started to centralize a lot of its security operations. Maybe you can share how this shift, especially after the breach, has allowed you to have more of a cohesive security strategy, and how it has improved overall when it comes to your web exposure.
Yeah, so what we've done now is we've brought in, so we've I think like most companies, what happens is over time you build up tools where you may have been quite reactive to a specific um, uh, uh, vulnerability or whatever. So you've reactively bought a tool and put it in the toolbox, and but you get to a point where you've got so many tools in the toolbox. A lot of them you don't really use anymore. So what we did was we then reviewed all of the tools that we had in the toolbox and decided, right, where is the threats coming from, and getting some input from the NCSC also helps as well. Getting hold of a lot of other security uh, stats to look at, well, where are the incoming threats coming from, so that you can focus on those. And then what we did was we centralized a lot of the reporting, because at one stage, I'll use this analogy, you couldn't see the woods for the trees, in the form of there's so much information coming back that it's very easy to miss something, where now we've consolidated a lot of that. We've done a gap analysis. We've pulled in all of our systems into a centralized SOC, um, which has made it a lot simpler to be able to quickly get visibility, and then looked at the internal teams dynamics and knowledge base, and then grown that as well to look at how to deal with certain issues that may pop up from a security perspective. But it has put a lot more focus on it now that we've had a security event, which is kind of, it's good in a way, but at the same time, it would have been nice to have been there beforehand. But on speaking to a lot of other clubs that have had breaches in the past, and that it's the scenario where once you've had a situation, then it becomes more higher on the agenda of the powers that be.
Yeah, and obviously, once you consolidate a lot, you're going to be getting quite a lot of alerts, right? Some of them are going to be important. Some of them are going to be maybe less important. You could push to the side later on. How has, using a tool like Reflectors help you streamline this, approach when it comes to making quicker decisions as well when it comes to your overall web exposure and security?
Yes, so I mean the nice thing about reflectors is the built-in intelligence. So it will tell you based on a priority what it thinks is more of a priority and what is less of a priority. So I'm not going through logs and so forth on that to try and identify the priority myself. It's doing it already. So it means I can spend less time on the things that I don't need to worry about, and more time on the things that I do need to worry about. And because I now have that visibility of the websites, I can then have more of those interactions with the suppliers of those. And if we bring anything new on board, I can preempt what I'm expecting from a security standpoint or status from them, whereas before that wasn't really the case. One thing I'd like to say as well is the implementation of reflectors took me less than a day, in the form of, it was that I think it was the next day after the breach, and I got approval to put it in. Lior and the team were really quick in getting it set up so we can have some visibility and seeing what was going on within the site, if there was anything that we may have missed, whilst the forensic team was still doing their work.
Firstly, I'm happy to hear that we're able to get it up running quickly, as we do for all of our clients, and you were happy with getting those results quickly, as we promised as well. Now, looking ahead, how has your experience with Reflectors shaped your internal security policies and your approach to managing digital risks? And what advice would you give to other organizations on proactively protecting their online assets?
Yeah, I mean, anybody who protect their online assets, shouldn't be in the field as such, in the form of, it is priority, especially in today's age. I think, like we said right in the beginning, don't just trust the third party. We did. It was a legacy thing that was in place, but use the opportunity to then have a look and say, well, okay, let's realign our security assets. Let's assign risks associated to each one of those. Yeah, I would just say, even though we've got a better level of confidence within our digital strategy, having the tools like Reflective is certainly a benefit compared to where we were before. And I think over time, the types of vulnerabilities may change, especially with the introduction of AI and so forth on that, where they're getting a little bit more clever and so forth on how to identify those risks.
And if you had any last message before, that you wanted to tell the audience and anyone else about this, what would be the most important thing that you would like to get across to them as a final note?
Yeah, I mean, from my side, I think the main thing I'd like to do is have a look at the tools that you use to manage your third-party products and your environments. Look at the merits of those tools. This was a very simple process that we went through and so forth on that, but it will save you in the long run, especially in the form of confidence from the rest of the business and so forth, that we have this now covered to a certain degree, but also from a team's perspective, that we've learned from it. We've now got better visibility. We've interact with our suppliers a lot better since then as well.
Okay, so before we go on to a little bit of an explanation about reflectors, we've got some questions from the audience over here. The first one is from Tim, and he asked a question: was the original third-party service provider PCI compliant?
Yeah, so this was an interesting one that we're busy, because it's still fresh, we're still busy looking at the moment. We would assume that they were PCI compliant in the form of the transactions. Well, the original transactions were supposed to be passed off to the card agent. We then found out later on that this used to be the case, but no longer was the case, and that it was actually done within the frame of the website itself, at which point that is why they were able to scrape the data off when card transactions were being done. The one advantage was that other payment methods like Apple Pay and so forth, they weren't able to gain that data. It was purely card information, so they were looking for 16 digits and so forth on that. And the other advantage is, lucky enough, it was a very, very small group of people that was affected by it. But since then, we've looked at our PCI DSS strategy internally to do an audit of these third parties to identify if they haven't been PCI DSS, why, and if they are, then to see what their level of compliance is.
Okay. And another question that we have over here is, how long did it take from the first approach to approve it? I'm not sure, and why wasn't it approved before?
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's probably talking about the tool set itself.
Yep.
So initially, this time, how long did it take to approve? It took probably in the matter of a week to approve the product. Well, I say that less than a week, because what actually happened was Reflectors was willing to put it in for us before approval took place, whilst approval was pending. So we had that visibility and so forth. But I think the whole approval process from start to PO being raised was about a week in total. Why wasn't it approved before? As I mentioned with football, sometimes it's an up and down. It's a bit like the working for a council or government organization. We were in the Premier League. We went down back into the EFL. So obviously budgets become a bit tighter, and that's what stalled the initial purchasing process of the product a year ago.
And the person had a follow-up question, which was, what would you suggest? What would be your suggestion in order to internally sell security and not wait until something happened?
Yeah. So what I would suggest is, and this is fantastic way of doing it, is try and organize with whether it's with your pen test company or whoever looks after your cyber security, the cyber insurance company, for example. So there was, if I could go back a little bit, one of the areas that was a misconception from my perspective is we have cyber insurance, but I thought cyber insurance only kicks in if you have a ransomware attack, or where you're going to need to pay a large amount of money and so forth. It is not the case. As soon as you have the breach, if you have a cyber insurance company, contact that company. They will also help with regards to some proactive systems and ways of helping you through the breach. But also, if you contact them earlier as well, you will find out that they will able to facilitate things like tabletop exercise. And the tabletop exercise is where you get the heads of your departments, your boards, and so forth, to sit around a table, and you throw them with a mock breach where they cannot use their mobile phone, they're unable to access their emails, and go through a scenario of what it is from a business perspective that they would experience should they be in a breach, for them to understand what it is that they need to do and to put in place from a business perspective, because you can do a review after that tabletop exercise. And because they've had to go through it and understood it from an external source, not an internal, because sometimes I find internally we can talk and talk and talk. But IT is a bit of a black hole. Security is, unfortunately, my analogy for security and IT is we're a bit like a goalkeeper. So nobody really knows the goalkeeper's name if they're keeping the ball out of the net. But as soon as you start letting balls into the net and the other side starts scoring, everybody knows your name. And it's exactly the same with security. As soon as you have a security event, everybody will know your name. Everybody will want to put their 2 cents in and so forth on that. But by putting the proactive measures of explaining to the board and having somebody external do that explanation and take them through that process, I find that is the best way to do it.
Okay, I got a question here for myself, which
Yeah.
was how could somebody try the system? Well, they could either reach out to myself or Lior, or I'll give you email at the end after I go through a quick demonstration just of what Reflectis is. But you can always reach out to us, and you'll have our details, and we'll also send out the recording here to everybody at the end, and they can get in contact, or they can also register on the website as well if they would like to. Any other questions? And if not, at this time, I'll just go through a quick presentation about reflectors. And if you have any questions during for myself or for Graham, obviously you can write it in the chat, and we'll give you a couple of minutes as well after as well. So, I just wanted to once again thank Graham for coming here and sharing his firsthand experience when it comes to what actually occurred within Leeds. As I said, this is not something that happens every single day, and as I said earlier, this is takes a lot of courage as well to put your face out there and talk about it. And we've seen, you mentioned a couple of breaches earlier, and they've been a very cryptic about what actually happened, and you're here coming out and showing and explaining and giving advice, and it should be applauded, and it should be something that everybody should be doing as well, because breaches are going to happen. But it's how can we learn from it as a community in order to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And if it does happen, because these will continue to happen, of course, what can we do in order to prevent it once it does happen? And what are the best steps, as you outlined as well, once it does, in order to make sure that you can handle it the best you possibly can from a security standpoint, and also from an organizational standpoint. So I just wanted to say thank you again for coming here and assisting us with this. So, at its core, Reflectors is a web exposure platform. It's built specifically to help organizations discover, monitor, and mitigate threats coming from third-party scripts, tags, and services running on their websites. Things like marketing tools, analytics, widgets, payment platforms like Graham mentioned, third-party integrations, and so on, often fly under the radar of security teams. And what makes our platform stand out is that, as you can see over here, we're able to offer a couple of different things. Firstly, we're proactive. So we don't wait for incidents to happen. The platform will constantly monitor your site's client-side behavior, flagging suspicious or unauthorized changes before they become a problem. We are agentless. As Graham also mentioned, which means that there's no code for you to install. So we're not adding more problems onto your website. And also, as Graham mentioned, there is no performance hit and there's no integration overhead. Something that we can get you up and running within a day, so you can get protection for your website extremely quickly. It is AI driven, so our engine uses machine learning to spot patterns, direct anomalies, and classify third-party risks in real time. And it's easily deployed. As we mentioned, it took him a day once he got initial approval, even before the PO was offered. So in order to help clients, we try to do the maximum we possibly can in that area. So how does it work? So the first thing that we do is we scan your website from the outside. No agents, as I said, no tagging, and no access required. It works on any website around the world from the companies that I mentioned earlier, if you're in any industry as well. And then we build a full inventory of every third-party tool and behavior, including those not traditionally monitored by IT or security, like marketing tools, social media scripts, or supply chain integrations as well. From there, the platform maps risks to real-world threats, including Magecart style attacks that we talked about, but also other issues like PCI compliance, privacy issues, and so on. And then finally, we provide clear, actionable insights so you can understand what's happening, what's at risk, and what needs to be done to mitigate it all without creating alert fatigue. So at the end of the day, Reflectors is here to help organizations like Graham to make sure that you get the visibility and the understanding of what's happening in your website so you can prevent attacks like we discussed earlier. So before we finish today, once again, I wanted to thank Graham for your time and your expertise. And we're looking forward to the many years that we've got together in order to make sure that this never happens again and give you more visibility, especially when you're going to be adding on more products into the future onto your website.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for turning out. It's been a pleasure. And as I said, this is a very important webinar, and we're glad that every single one of you were able to join and listen and learn something from Graham's experience.